Okay, everyone. Welcome to Symbiota Support Group, February 2024. Excited to see you all here. Just a reminder that we did meet in January at kind of an odd date. I know it was a holiday for a lot of us. And that was an overview of what we did in 2023 and kind of a looking forward to 2024. So it could be a nice just kind of refresher about what's going on in the Symbiota world. Feel free to check out that recording, and Lindsay can throw that in the chat just so you know where to find it. It's a nice thing to, I don't know, listen to while you're doing your dishes or something. Stay abreast of what's going on. Speaking of what's going on, just a couple of announcements here. One is a reminder of the Digital Data Conference, which is going to be in Lawrence, Kansas, at the Kansas Biodiversity Institute. So that's really exciting. It'll be in person, kind of centrally located in the country. And then you can also join via Zoom. And soon there will actually be a data quality workshop that's going to, the rounds are going to come soon, where there's an announcement for this data quality workshop. And included in that data quality workshop is going to be, I'm pretty sure, an application for travel funding to help you get to the data quality workshop. So just keep your eyes on your email. We'll definitely send it to the Symbiota Google group and probably to our other email listservs so that people can apply. And it'll be preferential based on people who haven't been to a conference before and who have a really big interest in improving data quality. So again, keep your eyes peeled for that. And it's not just for Symbiota users, it's for people who are using any sort of management system.
Sorry, Katie, is that during the Digital Data Conference, or is this a separate event?
It is during the Digital Data Conference, and if you are accepted for travel funding, you'll go to the whole conference, and the workshop is at the conference.
Got it. Thanks for the clarification.
Thanks for asking. Another exciting announcement is that the Ecdysis portal campaign starts tomorrow. So during the month of February, we're focusing on the Ecdysis portal, which is for live managed arthropod collections. Some people might be familiar with SCAN. SCAN is mostly a snapshot portal these days, and anyone who's managing live, a good proportion of them have migrated over to Ecdysis. So if you're interested in managing your data about arthropods in a Symbiota portal, Ecdysis is probably your best bet. And Lindsay will be putting, I think Lindsay already put stuff in the chat, so we're good there. Okay, so it's been a little while since we have talked about images, and I keep on getting questions about them. And since our last discussion about images in 2022, a lot of things have changed. So I thought it would be a good time to talk about where images are in portals, quote unquote, and you'll understand why I put quotes on that in a little bit. And then how you can figure out where are your images, where can I put more images if I'm creating more images, how can I edit images, move things between records, etc. So that's the purpose of today. We're going to talk about what images, first of all, because there's several different types of images that you can view in Symbiota portals. Where are mine? Where can I put ones? And how do I link them to the correct records? So first of all, what images are we talking about? Well, there are a few major categories of images that are in Symbiota portals. Probably the one that you all are most familiar with is specimen images. So each record may have one or many images associated with it that is a picture of that physical specimen, or potentially things relating to that physical specimen. And even within that larger category, there are kind of some subcategories that you'll see here, there around the portals. One of them, and this you won't see in the portals, but this is an important note to mention, is one type is archival images, another is web-ready images, and another is called thumbnail images. And I'll go into detail about what those are in a moment. Then there are observation images. These are images of something that has been seen in the field. but has not actually been collected and deposited in any sort of natural history collection. So that's kind of like an iNaturalist observation. There are capabilities in Symbiota portals that allow you to just take observational records. And then there are taxon images. And so these are general pictures of a taxon that go along with the taxon profile page. So like if you clicked on a species, then it would say like, hey, this species, here's a description of the species. Here are all the pictures of the species. If you have like really nice pictures of certain taxa, you can put them into Symbiota portals with a little bit of help if you want them to show up on those taxon pages. You're like, oh, here's a really beautiful picture of this particular species. I don't know where that species was or what time it was, but it's a good representation that can go on a taxon profile page. I won't be talking very much about observation or taxon images during kind of the presentation part, but if you have any questions about that, please ask kind of at the Q&A part. Okay, so let's dial back to the specimen images. These are the images that you see associated with those natural history collections objects that you're managing in Symbiota portals. So first of all, there are archival images, and these are usually the ones that you're taking right there in your herbarium or in your arthropod collection or your mollusc collection or what have you. And those are usually really big images because you're imaging them on RAW, you're getting them in CR2 files or TIFF files or NEF files, a bunch of different formats that tend to be like above 30, 40, sometimes 50, 60 megabytes. Those never go into the portals. I'm like kind of an asterisk on that, but you're never linking directly to archival images in the portals in most cases, because that would take forever to load those on a browser. Like if someone clicked the link and had to wait for like 2 minutes for their pictures to show up, then that'd be really inconvenient. So those generally go into archival storage. Those will probably be on your own servers. They'll be in Box or Dropbox or Amazon, what have you, just someplace where you can store a lot of images that take up a lot of space. Then there are web-ready images, and these are the images that you see linked to Symbiota records. And these tend to be no more than 10 megabytes, usually closer to like 2, 3, or 4 megabytes, 3,000 to 4,000 pixels wide, and that's like an herbarium specimen. So like mosses and lichens might be smaller, arthropods might be smaller too. They're usually in JPEG format because that loads pretty readily on most browsers. And that large, quote unquote, 4 megabyte, 4,000 pixel wide image is what you'll see called the large image URL on the Symbiota portals. So don't be confused. You'll see 3 different things that say large, medium, and thumbnail. Large does not mean archival. You can just toss the archival images into your back storage places, and they never link to your Symbiota portals. What large means in Symbiota portals is that JPEG web-ready image. You can downsize that image into an even smaller JPEG, and that's a medium. And then you can downsize it even more into it's a little postage stamp of a thing, and that's what we call thumbnail images. So thumbnails are just like 300 pixels wide, and they're what you see when you do a search and you're just scrolling down and you see all the little pictures show up. That's just so people get an idea of, oh, there is a specimen there, and I can click on it and get a really big picture. Okay, and before I hop into this next question, I'm going to show you kind of an example. So I'm in my trusty CCH2 site as usual, and I'm going to go into my edit existing occurrence records. I'm going to look at one of my specimen records that has an image over here on the side. And when I click on the images tab here, you'll see that there are these 3 different types of image. So in reality, I probably should have put a 4th type of image underneath this specimen archives saying medium images, because archival is just somewhere else. And then in the portals, you're going to see the large, which is your web ready, your web URL, oh, this is so confusing, which is your medium and your thumbnail URL. So if you add a new file, let's say, this is a little bit more clear. Your image URL, that is the large JPEG. Medium version is a bit smaller. Thumbnail version, even smaller, like 200, 300 pixels. So a thing that will help you distinguish between, is this an archival image and is this a web-ready image, is what type of image it is. If it's a CR2, a RAW, a NEF, or a TIFF, usually that's not a web-ready image. That probably cannot be uploaded to a Symbiota portal without things getting really slow or breaking. But if it's a JPEG, look at the size. And if it's under 10-ish megabytes, that's probably a web-ready image. That's what you can upload to a Symbiota portal. Okay, any questions on that before I move on? All right, and feel free to throw them in the chat and I can answer them as we go, or we can save it till the end. Okay, so second question, where really are the images that you see in the portals? Because when you're looking at this image right here, and you go to manage your images, you just kind of see some links and you're wondering, so when I upload to the portal, where is it actually going? And this is a commonly misunderstood thing. You don't upload an image into a Symbiota portal. You actually upload an image into an image server that is linked to the Symbiota portal. So the Symbiota portal lives in one server, theoretically, and the images live in another server, usually. This is usually the case. This is the case with Symbiota Support Hub hosted images. We have an image server, and anything that you upload, quote unquote, into Cynet actually gets deposited here into the image server. And again, we're talking about web-ready and thumbnail images. So no archival images, just keep those off the table. So when we put something into an image server, that image server says, thanks for the image. Here's a link where you can reference the image later in the future. And the data server says, great, I'll store that link so that whenever a user comes, I will hand that link to the user. And the user gets to view that image. So it's actually this kind of like chain reaction thing where there's a one-time process when the image server gives the data server a link. And that link is what you're then referencing in the future. That's also why, you know, when you download a Darwin Core archive, you don't get a Darwin Core archive that has a bunch of data and then 500 images in it. You're only getting links to the images. That's because you're downloading from the database all the links to the images in whatever image servers those are stored in. So where are the images that you're seeing in your portal? Well, you can investigate this. So this is what I'm hoping to empower you to do, is to be able to look at your images and figure out where they are. Okay, so I'm going back into my collection management here. I'm going to go edit existing occurrence records, look at my specimen again. And if I go into the images tab, you can click the pencil icon to view any of your images that already are uploaded. And you can look at the URL, and that gives you a hint, or rather it tells you about where your images are stored. So in this case, I have a link to api.idigbio.org. This is kind of an old way, let's see, 5-7 years ago. idigbio actually had image servers and was saying, sure, we'll take all your images and we'll provide you those links so that people can come and look at the images through Symbiota portals. And they did that for a while and then realized that that was kind of out of scope of idigbio's mission. And so they actually handed off a bunch of these images to the Symbiota Support Hub to manage, but they still have one server that's still hosting images. And I'm not sure about the future of that server, but right now, at least this collection has some idigbio server images. If we go to another specimen record, I'm going to limit to with images. That was uploaded later. Oh, I have a broken one, so that's a great example. And I go to images, and then I click the pencil. It says ImageLib/CCH2, and then it has more information about where that image is. When you see the web URL or any of the URLs starting with /ImageLib, this is giving you a relative path to your image. If I actually clicked on this link, you would see the whole path up here. It's cch2.org/ImageLib/CCH2. And what that's telling me is that it's actually storing it in our image library server. And that's our image server that's associated with the Symbiota Support Hub. So it looks like it's storing it in the same server, but it's actually just pointing to the image server. So same thing if you went to the Lichen portal and I looked for some lichens that have images. I click on images. You'll see that it says /ImageLib. That means that it's stored on the Symbiota Support Hub image server. So if you find that, then that means that's where your images are. So in the last year, there was a pretty big transition because previously Cyverse, also known as iPlant in very early years, was storing images for a large number of collections, primarily herbarium collections, primarily in this the Cernic TCN, and then also the CCH2 and PCC and NEVP TCNs, alphabet soup. A lot of people were putting their images on Cyverse. Cyverse also decided that image hosting of just these static images was outside of their scope. And so the Symbiota Support Hub was able to facilitate the transfer of all of those images onto our image servers, the Symbiota Support Hub image servers at Arizona State University. And so lots of those images got moved, all of those images got moved over. And there was a process of changing all of those links from the Cyverse URLs to Arizona State University URLs. This was actually a pretty huge process, and it took us probably multiple hundreds of hours together to just finalize, but it's there now. And so you shouldn't see too many links that say Cyverse on them anymore. There are some lingering still because we're still cleaning things up from when we transferred things over, but that is an old thing that you may see a bunch of links to cyverse.org. Okay, any questions about how to look at where your images are coming from? I'm going to check my chat here. Carl, I'm gonna talk about your question later. And then Megan says image URL. If the image is larger than 10 megabytes, this is a problem. Should the size of the processed images, for example, when exporting jogs, or probably JPEGs from RAW using Lightroom, be set to a maximum of 10 megabytes? Probably. So in the CCH2 project, we set it to a maximum of 7 megabytes, and then it ended up optimizing to closer to like 4 or 5. You can kind of play with it and see what makes the most sense or what kind of gets the resolution that you're looking for. But there's also a process during the linking of images to your specimen records in Symbiota that has the option to downsample your images. So if you're like, shoot, we already like have 1,000 images that are all 12 megabytes, don't sweat it because we can downsample as we're pulling things in. But that's if you're storing your images on Symbiota Support Hub servers. Brad, you have a question?
Hi, yeah. I don't know if this is the right time, but we're kind of talking about this stuff. So we just ran into an issue the other day where someone sent us a message saying, hey, when we click on a record that has a thumbnail, once we try to go in and see the large version, there's no image there. So there's a thumbnail, but no real image. And it seemed like they were for blocked species. So, you know, they're like threatened and endangered species where the locality information is blocked and the image is supposed to be blocked, but the thumbnail is still there. I didn't know if there was some like, I don't know. I'm just asking why that might be, or if there's some like unlink the thumbnails of stuff that's supposed to be blocked or something, or
I'm not sure about that, but I think all images for protected species should be blocked. Like if you're going down that scrolling list, you shouldn't see any images on the side if you're not logged in and you have access to that. My guess is
So-
what's happening in your case is that because you guys host your own images, so you're providing those URLs to us, we build thumbnails for you, or we have the opportunity to build thumbnails for you if you don't have them already provided. And if your image link breaks, you know, you move your images somewhere else and your URLs change, our thumbnails don't know it. Like the link is still in there to the thumbnail, so the thumbnail image isn't broken, but your original image might still be broken.
Brad, are you blocking the image yourself, or is Symbiota blocking? Because that record needs to be
Right.
tagged as being protected for anything to be blocked. If that happens, then all the images are blocked.
right. Yeah. So like we do try to block things out going out for some things like Michigan T&E species, for example. So even if Symbiota didn't block them, the same information should still not be present. But this, I know that this was a blocked species that should be blocked and probably is also blocked through Symbiota. So like both ways it's blocked. So like I'll have to dig up the email and find the specifics, but what I remember seeing was that like a bunch of the same species didn't have thumbnails and you couldn't get to the picture, but then some of them still had the thumbnail. When you clicked on it, there was no picture because the large picture was still blocked, but for some reason the thumbnail had hung on. Maybe like it wasn't blocked before and now it is and the thumbnail stayed or something, or
James
No, they're all
says
blocked,
that
but
he's finding they're having that same issue in Oregon flora. So I don't know.
I don't know, but I thought that for the hidden images, for the ones that are in rare species lists, that only the locality information is blocked, not necessarily the image.
no, the images are too.
Images
yeah.
are blocked too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's all the images. It's not, there's no cases where one image is blocked and another isn't. But like Kitty said, a lot of times if there's remote images and there's a thumbnails are created cached locally, that remote image might get blocked on their end, but not on our server. But that means that record's not blocked, so the record needs to be blocked. So
Actually, I think that I understand. I realize now the images can have record data if it's a label image, of course. But I think it would actually be very helpful, therefore, to tag things whether the label or organism, because ideally the organism image would be helpful if it's not blocked, because then people can see what the specimen looks like. So
True, but it's pretty rare that you have, well, it's not rare, but it's not always that you'll have a label versus an organism label. Like that's
Yeah,
how
I know.
lichens and bryophytes are often, but like with herbarium specimens and sometimes like
I
fish
know.
specimens and
I
arthropods.
think it's the rule that they have separate images, but many others not. So I guess
Yeah,
I understand.
that's
I'll
a
send you
good idea though.
specific example of the records that I'm talking about and with some more, you know, details, and you can.
Sounds good. James, you have additional comments?
Yeah, now that Brad brought this up and I looked into it, it's actually worse than we think. So you can, you know, get the image URL from that thumbnail, and you can't see much from the thumbnail, but you can just change the TN for thumbnail to LG and get the full resolution image in your link. And in addition, even if you didn't have the thumbnail links, since all of the links in Symbiota kind of use the same scheme, you could pretty much easily construct a link for it, a specimen based on the barcode.
Yeah,
So-
that makes sense. I don't know what protections are actually applied to the image links themselves, or whether the image links are just, not presented.
They do show up in the download, just by the way. I mean, I don't really know what to do about it, but I do know that somebody pointed out to me, ironically, as someone who worked with rare species, that, oh yeah, you can just download the occurrences and then grab the links from the download and then put the links in the in your browser and it will pop up.
I thought that those were redacted.
If you download it and you're logged in, then you will get those links in the download. So this does get addressed. We looked multiple times. I mean, we could investigate. If you email us these specific situations, we could investigate and look
Okay.
into it. But it is something that we come across, but they are blocked. We'll look into, James, we'll look into the thumbnail thing too, to see if you're saying it's displayed on the list, but not the large image.
Right. So if I do a search for something that is restricted when I'm not logged in, I can still see the thumbnails. But even if I couldn't, it would be easy to make those links.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay, we'll
And
look
this
at
is an
that,
Oregon
so-
Flora, right?
Right. But I think it would be the same on any portal.
Yeah, it should be, but okay, cool. Thanks for reporting that. We'll definitely look into it.
I actually do that all the time, is that I forget to log out so I can see what's really blocked. So if you're looking at what should be blocked, make sure you log out of the portal, because you may have permissions to see things.
Definitely.
Everyone can see when really they can't.
All right, well, we'll pivot back to talking about where the images actually live. And if you remember, I was just talking about how they live in an image server and then they're linked to your data server. So that means, or that still leaves the question, where are the images that I'm seeing? Again, they could be in some other, TAC has a bunch of image hosting, Symbiota Support Hub has image hosting. You can have servers at your own institutions that can host them as well. But there are some caveats around that I'll go into when I'm talking about where you can put your images. So the options are identical. You can put them in your own server, someone else's servers, or the Symbiota Support Hub's servers, basically. Whatever you choose, what needs to be available to the Symbiota portal is a link directly to that image. And that link has to end in .jpeg or whatever, PNG, whatever it is. It can't just be like a link to an image in Google Drive, because that is not actually going to be treated as an image in the Symbiota portal. So if you decide to use your own, just make sure that it's being stored in a web accessible server. That means that someone from the outside can use the internet to go look at the images on your server. Sometimes that's like a security risk, or it just requires more security around it. So many institutions say, hey, yeah, we can put your images on a server, but we can't make it web accessible. So just make sure that that's something that you talk about if you're going to your own partners or your own IT saying, can we have a web accessible image storage? There are other options like Texas Advanced Computing, I think, has like a relationship with the Arctos collection management system. So they put their images there. There are a few other out there, but not a lot. So for that reason, we have made image hosting available through the Symbiota Support Hub, specifically through our BioKick services. BioKick stands for Biodiversity Knowledge Integration Center, and it's the center out of which kind of the Symbiota Support Hub is administered currently. And if you are not associated with a thematic collections network that was established before 2021, that was kind of the cutoff of when we can support image hosting for free through the IDIG Bio grant, then you might want to investigate getting your images hosted with the Symbiota Support Hub. That means putting your images on our image servers and getting those links fed into the Symbiota portals. The first 25 gigabytes of image storage are of no cost to live managed collections in Symbiota portals. And after that, it's a pretty low rate. We're trying to keep things as cheap as possible because we know image hosting is a huge bear to the collections community. Okay, so how do I get my images linked to their records in the portal? Well, if you host your images through BioKick services, that's really, really easy as long as your images are named according to the catalog numbers. We basically do it for you. If you have your images, you dump them in what's called Globus, and then the Globus moves things over to a temporary place where we then run a script and bring all those images in and link them to your records according to catalog number. It's very easy. It's not too difficult to upload images using other methods either. If you're doing it, well, I'll go into this in a second. I'm gonna skip a slide or two. If you are providing your own image URLs, then you can create what's called an image URL or use the image URL mapping tool. And you just need a CSV file that has your catalog numbers in one column and your web-ready JPEG links in another column. And if you have thumbnails, you can provide those links. And if you have medium-sized images, you can provide those links. But as a reminder, your web-ready image URLs need to end in .jpeg for them to be able to be seen by the Symbiota portals and show up nicely in the Symbiota portals. So those are
actually
options. Oh, go ahead.
Katie, they don't have to end in JPEG. It could be a dynamic link. So that's fine. It could be a IIIF link, or it just has to return a JPEG though. And if it doesn't have the doesn't end in JPEG, then it has to return the meme type within part of the header. Your web server needs to say it is a JPEG so the browser knows how to deal with it. That's the main issue. So
that is a more accurate and precise version of this. My main point is people may say, oh, I have a link to my image, but it's like a Google Drive link or a Box link or a link to their library's website that has an image viewer in it. Those won't work. Like you can try, you can copy that link and throw that in there, but it's not going to show up the way you would expect it. But yes, great point. If you have like a IIIF server, which is really fancy and awesome, those links could totally be pulled in.
Yeah, and if you have any questions when you're uploading data with the links, I mean, just contact us, let us know, we could evaluate it. So
yeah, it's generally best if you're going to endeavor any large batch process and you're not sure whether it's going to work, just shoot us an email real quick just so that we can make sure that you don't accidentally create 1,000 faulty links. And then I wanted to clarify also that if you're individually adding images, say you just have, 1 or 2 images here or there, you can upload them just one by one as well, right through the occurrence editor. So that images tab that I was showing you earlier, you can upload them through there. Spoiler alert, that just goes to Symbiota Support Hub image servers if you're uploading it one by one. You can also do it from the create new records using image tool, which I don't see people using all that often, but it is right here, the create new records using image. If you upload an image here, that is also just going to Symbiota Support Hub servers in the case of Symbiota Support Hub hosted images. I'll clarify there. And then from the skeletal data entry tool, I think you can add images too. And if you're in a Symbiota Support Hub managed portal, that's just going to our servers. The caveat here is that wherever you're uploading or when you're uploading images through one of those individual means, it's just going to be stored in whatever image server is linked up to the portal by default. And for most of the portals that you guys are interacting with, that's a Symbiota support hub image server. But like for the Myco portal, that's a different image server because their Symbiota code is actually on Illinois servers. So depends on where your Symbiota portal is, but if it's a Symbiota support hub hosted portal, then it's probably going to our image servers too. Okay, so I wanted to go into a demo on editing, deleting, and remapping images because this often comes in handy. So I showed you before how you can go look at your image links. You go into edit existing occurrence records, you open up your specimen record, and you open up the image link. And then from here, you can edit your image. And by edit your image, I mean edit the URLs or the links to that image. This is also where you can apply tags if you want. So there are a number of tags in many portals that allow you to put some sort of kind of controlled vocabulary on your images. And that leads to a question that was in the chat from Carl. Can you batch upload images with the tag information? That is a great question. And you should see a Symbiota Support Hub meeting that we had. Was that in November, Lindsay, or December?
December of last year.
December. Okay. Lindsay will link to our recordings again in the chat. And that was a pretty helpful walkthrough of how one group of collections is actually adding tags as they're uploading images. So just take a look at that. Okay, so the options that you have here on this images page, I'm going to zoom out a little bit, include edit image data, which means I can add a caption, I can add notes, copyright, source. I can change the sort order. This sort order that you see right here is just the sort order of images popping up in the occurrence editor. So if you had like the label, you might want that to come up first because people are transcribing from the label. And so that's what this sort will do. You can add tags. Captions will show up underneath the images. Photographer should be someone who has an account in the portal. But if that's not the case, you can click this little button here and you can manually enter a name into that. And whatever is here is going to override whatever photographer is listed here. There have been some quirks on this in the past where this photographer has accidentally overridden the one that you've written in. So just make sure that you don't select someone and then put someone here. I think it works fine now, but just to be safe, you can just keep that at select photographer and you'll be sure that this override is the only photographer linked to your image. Okay, another option you have is to delete the image. And there's kind of two options here. There's delete the image from being linked with this record. So if you just click this button without checking this box, that just means I don't want this image to show up alongside this record. If you check this box where it says remove image from server, if your Symbiota portal has write access to the image server, then it will delete that image from the server completely. And that's a big if. Like for this case, because this is a Symbiota Support Hub portal, I don't think we have write access to IDIG servers way over in Florida. So this actually won't work in this case. But if this were one of those URLs that starts with image lib, then it does have write access. you don't necessarily need to know all these details, but I want to make the point that you could potentially delete your image from the server completely. Meaning if it's linked anywhere else on the internet, including in like the Bryophyte portal, the Teredo portal, some other, Africa plants portal, or the Asia plants portal, you could delete it for all of those portals at the same time because you're essentially breaking that link. So just be cautious when you're deleting images from the server. If you just click delete image without this box checked, then it will just unlink that image record from this specimen record. Another option you have is to remap an image to another specimen. And what that's going to do is take the URL that's related to that image, remove it from this current specimen record, and then stick it onto a different specimen record. So that's like what happens when you misname an image and it gets linked to the wrong catalog number. You can sometimes move it over to the specimen that has the correct catalog number. So if I open this occurrence linking tool, it is going to give me some search options. So I could bring up the correct catalog number and do a search. And then if I do find it, I can select that. And then I could click remap. And then that's going to move that image to that other record. You might not always see this option on your list. There are some cases in which it has been disabled. So let us know if you really have a need to use that. Garth asks a question, can more than one specimen record link to the same image, or does each link need to be unique to one specimen record? You can have one image linked to as many specimen records as you want, really, because it's just a link that's attached to that specimen and it doesn't have to be unique. Megan says, I do wish there was a way to view the record when using the remapping tool. I mean, you kind of can. If you go up here and you click this kind of down panel and it comes down here, you can open it up right here, but it is in two different windows. So I know that's not the most convenient thing ever.
I've used that way, but I mean like actually view the record you're going to link the image to.
Oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. In that case,
it is useful to scroll though.
For sure.
I definitely give a plus for that.
In that case, you probably just have to open up another browser window and look at it, which is also inconvenient, but possible. And then the two other options is link to a new blank occurrence record within the collection. So this is kind of like remapping to another specimen, but it's just like, oh, shoot, I know that I don't already have a record for this image, so I'm just going to map it to a new occurrence, and it's just going to remove it from my current specimen record and put it onto that new specimen record. And then disassociate image from all specimen records. This is kind of the same as deleting the image, but it's going to still be available on the taxon profile pages. So you're just removing it from that specimen record, but if it was linked to some sort of taxonomic name, it would still be available on the portal to be seen. And then if you need to edit your record's URL, say like it moved or you see some typo, you can just put that right here. And the web URL is the medium version. Large image URL is the biggest, like the 4 megabyte. Again, we're not talking about archivals here. And then the thumbnail is very, very small, little postage stamp. Okay, I'm going to open up the chat, see if there's more questions. Is there a way to import photos from general observations into my institution's collection when I'm importing the specimen data? Oh, good question, Kirsten. I know we have had that question in the past, and I think that's on our GitHub wish list. The question is, when you have something in general research observations and then a collection maybe gets that data as well. When they copy the data over, the image doesn't come over as well. So that could be something that we enable in the future, but not currently available. And then another question, is there a way to batch edit URLs in cases of images that have moved? No, there is not. There are no batch image updating options as of now. But if you have a need, especially for people who manage their data or their images in a different server, in their own server, if you're like, oh shoot, we had to restructure everything and now the URLs are different, just let us know and we can do some batch updates for you on the back end, like we just did with the Torch TCN. What determines the image sort order on the taxon profile pages? Okay, so we can talk about taxon images as well. There is another layer, as I mentioned, of image, another type of image, and that's just a taxon image. And if you have a particular type of permission, then you have the ability to add taxa or add images to taxa. So let's just look for a taxon. And this is the taxon profile. Well, this is the taxon profile page. And if I had editing access to be a taxon profile editor, I could come in here and add images in here. And I believe anything that's uploaded in to a specimen record automatically gets a taxon page sort sequence order of 50, because that's usually like a specimen record, which is beautiful, but not always as picturesque as a field image. And if you upload something that is a field image here, then I believe it gets a sort sequence of 40, but you can change that. So as I add an image to this taxon profile, I can say what sequence it's going to be in. So I could say that I like this image the most, or I like this image the most, and that one I could change the sort order in the taxon profile page. Again, there are only a handful of, I think, taxon profile editors per portal, but that could be something that is increased depending on the community that's managing that portal, because I'm pretty sure we would all agree that we want some nicer taxon images associated with our taxon profiles. Frank.
Yeah, maybe to clarify this, that this has relatively recently changed, that it used to be that the sort numbers of images, how they were attached to specimens, were the same sort order as the taxon profile images. And the reason why we changed that is because some people complained that people would hijack the system by always assigning really number one to their images in the specimens when they were uploading images. And then these images would always compete for the first spot in the taxon profile pages. So the idea is that we want to have really the best images in the taxon profile pages, rather than just any image that somebody uploads and then assigns a number one to. So that is the reason why that changed. It's still not perfect, but it's better than it was, I guess.
Yeah, good point. So before, when I had shown you the sort order where you can edit it in the specimen record, that's like a totally different sort order than the one that I just showed you on the taxon profiles. Any other questions about images?
Did I make a quick comment?
Go for it.
So it's not, as far as archival images go, it's not that the portal doesn't totally support displaying the archival. There is a field called archival URL, and you could do it. But the thing is, for the portals that are hosted at ASU, for the most part, it's just not something that is done, because archival images need to be hosted. It costs more money and put it out there, but it can be done, and it's done occasionally. But the general rule is it doesn't happen. As far as archival images like TIFFs and RAWs, the browsers can't display those. So the only option is when you click on it, it just downloads it to your local system. So, and generally a lot of collections, they want people to contact them and say, hey, can I have a tip for that? They want to like keep track and know who's asking for the real large images. So, yeah. And in general, you know, GBIF doesn't want those images either. So that's the reason for that. But there are exceptions.
Thanks, Ed. Any questions, other comments? So I see a lot of people here who probably already manage their images with us now, a lot of Cernic folks who got moved over from Cyverse. So welcome to the Symbiota Support Hub servers. And just a reminder that we do take additional images according to BioKick services, and Lindsay shared the link to that. Kirsten asks, can you talk about rotating images? Sometimes when I upload an image, it comes up sideways. Yeah, that's a sticky situation that happens every once in a while. And the background behind that, I might not go into detail because we have a article about that since it comes pretty frequently. But the gist is that there are multiple ways that images can be rotated. They can be rotated by putting a tag in the metadata that says, this is the normal orientation of this image. Or they can be rotated according to like moving the pixels to the correct orientation. And depending on, I'm pretty sure the Symbiota portals do not read those tags that say view it in this orientation by default. So if you are using a type of software that only sticks a tag on it that says view it like this, instead of actually rotating the pixels into the correct dimensions, then your images are probably going to show up sideways. So make sure that you're using something that actually rotates the pixels. So don't use like Windows Media Viewer. You'll need to use something like Photoshop or Lightroom or something that actually physically moves moves the pixels around instead of just adding what's called an EXIF tag.
It's actually the browser for large images will read that tag and do it right. But the problem is with the derivatives, the software that creates derivatives don't always copy over that tag, the EXIF data. And that's why the thumbnails and the medium-sized images will be like this, but the other one's correct. But it also makes it confusing with people who download it. That's why it's good to, if the pixels are correct, if people are like downloading them to do machine reading, that way it makes it so that they don't have to evaluate how the pixels are, because when they're doing machine reading analysis, they want standardization of the pixels, but then within their tools, they would have to build that into it and so forth. So,
but it's actually, unfortunately, more complicated than that, because the tags and the pixel orientation of the images can get out of sync depending on what software project you use, and it can be a real headache to kind of put them in sync again. So.
And also not all software reads the tags, and that's the thing. It just creates some, it's recommended that the pixels are actually changed because it just removes the ambiguous type situations that
but if you use, if you rotate the pixels, then make sure that you use a program that doesn't recompress the image. So it's a mess. It can be a mess.
Yeah, it's best to rotate it before you make the JPEGs if you have archival images. So when you're doing the review or stuff like that, or you have your large JPEG, and then you just do it once. You don't do it multiple times because.
All right, any other questions? There's some discussion in the chat about some older versus newer approaches to archival images. People used to, well, and sometimes they still do, change things into DNG format from RAW. That has fallen out of fashion in some circles. Some people are still doing it, but that's a bigger question for more like an ID bio forum, I think.
Katie, when you say saving them in RAW, you mean like no Lightroom, right? Just the naked picture that it was right from the Lightbox, right?
Yep.
Awesome.
If I could go back and do CCH2 again, or CCH, I mean, California Phonology Network again, I would probably just keep everything in RAW because then you haven't cropped anything out or done any changes. Although
Yeah, that would
DNGs
save a lot of
do,
time.
yeah, save some time, but also DNGs do save a record of what has happened to the image, I believe. So it's not like you've lost all that information. So
Well, going forward, we'll just save the RAW and then I won't have to export DNGs and JPEGs.
that's just my opinion and probably the opinion of a few other folks. So don't take that as gospel truth for sure.
Thanks.
So in the previous questions we had about the protected species, I checked a portal, logged out and did a search on a protected taxon, and the thumbnails are hidden in the current code. I think there was one point in the past where thumbnails were displayed, but like James was saying that you could just look at the thumbnail and figure out what the large image is in some cases. That has been removed. But also I want to note that if you search a rare species, even though that species is tagged as being protected, collections can go in there and untag. It's protected per occurrence. So that doesn't stop a collection from going in there and untagging something so that it could be viewed. So this has happened per occurrence, per collection. So you might still see some taxa that are not protected.
Well, thanks for tuning in, everyone. We're at the top of the hour or bottom of the hour, whatever is correct. And I want to respect everyone's time. So I'm going to